in college and had read an awful lot of things and studied many books and reference materials, Jewish books, non-Jewish oriented books alike. How could any of us pick out one and only one book? But suspecting that we knew the answer that would please the leader, our teacher, we replied almost in unison, the Tanakh, the Jewish Bible, of course. Turns out our teacher was sort of looking for anything but a pat answer. Darn, we thought we said the right thing, right? Our teacher's intention in making this basic inquiry, we later learned, was to inspire us to think more deeply about how we live, what we value, and how we spend our time. And one way that people can do that is by the books they read, right? That might say something, not everything, but something about those values and how we live. Tomorrow morning, we read in the Torah we read about Moses delivering his final words to our Israelite ancestors. Perhaps Moses had a similar intent as my teacher did in Safat. Upon completing the recitation of Ha'azinu, a very complex poem that takes up 6 of the 7 aliyot tomorrow, and the poem itself reflects ideas about Jewish history and destiny, Moses issues the following injunction. Moses recited all the words of this poem in the ears of the people. And when Moses finished reciting all these words to all of Israel, he said to them, "Take to heart all the words with which I have warned you this day. Enjoin them upon your children that they may observe faithfully all the terms of this teaching. For this is not a trifling thing for you. It is your very life. Through it you shall long endure on the land that you are about to possess upon crossing the Jordan." One of the things that's obviously striking about that very short, in Hebrew at least, short passage of about 2 sentences is the repeated use of the word kol, meaning all, as you heard me inflect it. At least 5, possibly 6 times in 2 sentences. Even in English, that would be a lot. And English teachers would mark you up for not using a synonym and using that same word, right? Certainly, the poetry of Ha'azinu tells us an encompassing story, but it hardly represents the totality of Israelite experience, even up to that point. In spite of Moses's injunction, rather the poetry hinted to larger experience and larger truth, as poetry often does. The repetition of all points the reader beyond the confines of the poet's context, which is Moses and the people at Mount Sinai, and points the reader beyond our immediate experience of that text. In fact, the rabbis of the Talmud recognized this when they audaciously commented that the phrase "Kol divrei hashira hazot," all the words of the poem, refers not to the poem that Moses just recited, but rather to the whole Torah, which clearly is not the contextual meaning. The Torah claims the Talmud then, in that comment, the Talmud claims that the Torah is not history, not science or journalism, but poetry. And that's a very, very interesting thought. Just as a poem requires the reader to be constantly thinking, deconstructing, analyzing, hypothesizing, and appreciating, so too, if the Torah is a poem, it calls us to engage it with all the faculties appropriate to understanding and interpreting poetry. Thus, Moses declares here, "Simu levavchem," put into it your hearts, literally. Not think about it, not analyze, put your hearts, because poetry is a lot of heart. Pay attention. to the poetry of Torah and the poetry of life in the way the Talmud is looking at this. Because the tools we need for a long and meaningful life are contained in these teachings. But like any other, it needs to be mined to get out the precious jewels. On this passage, the French medieval commentator Rashi quotes the rabbinic dictum, "The words of Torah are as mountains hanging by a hair." This enticing visual metaphor suggests that the study of Torah requires delicate concentration and full focus to make sure we get the threads of each metaphor and idea. It invites us to probe, make sense of, and apply the wisdom we find there in careful ways to our own lives. When we study and discuss the Torah, we are like the witness to the mountains, not daring to pull our eyes away from the spectacular sight for fear of missing something. The beauty of Torah discussion, like those that we had on the High Holy Days, is that we are called upon to bring our whole being, our whole life experience, and all of our intellect to unravel its mysteries and apply its teachings to our day. But the forceful use of the word all throughout here suggests that while the Torah is of value in and of itself, the application of Torah to our daily lives is actually more the essential point. The early Hasidic master, Reb Zev Wolf of Zhitomir, taught the essence of what we accomplish in our Torah study and prayer depends upon our actions when we go back out into the world. Moses' final words indicate that the study of Torah was never meant to be an activity we do merely as a hobby. It is the activity of life, be it mundane or intricate, that could permeate almost everything we do. Whether we're doing the dishes or closing a business deal, playing mahjong, or enjoying lunch with friends, the rabbis say, don't take your eyes off the mountain. Live Torah fully. Be mindful of a path that is present and passionate. Certainly, we are enjoined to set aside time to study so we can gain knowledge from our textual traditions. But if that study doesn't lead to living a more impassioned life, then the teaching becomes a trifle, or as Moses calls it here, a davar reik, an empty thing. As Moses states, ki lo davar reik hu mikem ki hu chayechem. This is not a trifling thing for you. It should be your very life. All the world's a stage for Torah. It can be found in conversations, editorials, art, and music. A rabbinic colleague of mine once was questioned by the IRS for including the theatrical trade paper Variety in his tax deductions. The rabbi responded, "Do you know how many good sermons I've gotten out of that paper?" I am not sure how much the tax personnel appreciated that, but the point is that Torah is everywhere, or at least to paraphrase a well-known Hasidic teaching, it is everywhere where we let the Torah in. This then is the lesson gleaned from my teacher in Safat. Is the answer to the most important book question the Tanakh, the Holy Bible? Maybe, but not necessarily. The most important book, my teacher suggested, was not our book of laws, but our book of days. Today, we might say our calendar app. What we choose to do with our time and with whom we choose to spend it informs the very character of our souls and the length of our days. Moses' final words do not dictate that we spend every minute poring over a page of Talmud, but that in every moment we allow the Torah and its values to resonate and permeate. May we be blessed to live this new year 5783 with the intention to make it all Torah all the time, to fill our days with Torah and teach it to each other and to our children and grandchildren through our actions. May we show ourselves to God and the world as Anshe Torah, people of Torah, not because we're looking at books every minute of every day, but because we are thoughtful, mindful, caring, kind, and compassionate people. Amen. Shabbat Shalom.